I think with Alice, I guess a big split for us is we kind of wanted to have some characters that felt more kind of had more of an Eastern influence, and then ones that complemented that with more of a Western influence. So I think Alice for us was sort of more of a Western type character, and one that was old enough to sort of had a few different interpretations. There was a lot to draw from in terms of sort of like not just her visual appearance, but the type of items and item designs we can incorporate into the game. Obviously there is the kind of the literary version. There's obviously various films. Yeah, I think it was like that kind of richness of resource materials that kind of like drew us towards, one of the reasons that drew us towards Alice.
Yeah, we wanted someone to stand out against Monkey King from Journey to the West, which is the other character. Like these two characters, it's a little bit difficult to talk about who came first because, for a PvP game, you need a minimum two characters to go up against each other, right? And I think out of all the other female characters that we can think of, Alice is probably one of the best well-known characters. And I think throughout her many adaptations as well, I really like that she's very recognizable, either from like tiny bits of her lore or even just visually. Like she's the blonde girl in the blue dress. It's very easy to pick her out of a crowd, and I think because of the richness of her lore, we could create so many like items and things based on that. So she's just like the perfect starting character for us.
No, I quite agree. She's obviously. I think it's really helpful the fact that like there are some really, really strong visuals that we associate with that character, but there was also enough kind of like there was enough sort of treasure to find like by digging around sort of the original source material and find sort of maybe like some lesser known elements if you want to draw anything that sort of find some slightly more surprising kind of Alice things, which for the items in particular has kind of been really, really helpful. So
And personally, I think I really pushed for Alice was because I really wanted a very feminine character. Because again, we wanted Alice to be the opposite of Monkey King, and Monkey King is a very strong, brash, male ego, I want to call him. Whereas Alice is, she's very feminine. She's very much about the curiosity of a child, going through a dreamlike world. And I quite like that energy for her, actually. For the default skin that we have for Alice, we worked with a very talented artist, Agnieszka, who's based in Poland, and she was very, very excited with our direction of Alice, I would say. I think she was the first character that we actually designed, pat down from the beginning. And of course, like, she had like almost like a template to start with. Like I said, the long blonde hair and the blue dress with a little apron, which is very Disney-esque, but we wanted to obviously have our own spin on it and, be a little bit different from what is, so-called generic. We wanted to look like she's very smart using potions and consumables, because in Turnbound, like a lot of her abilities is centered around using consumables. So like the drink me potion or the eat me cake and things like that, which is again quite well-known elements from her lore. And one of the core pillars, at least for when I wanted to design this character, is pushing that femininity from her and, from this old English look. So ironically, we went down with the Japanese fashion, the gothic Lolita look, with like the frills and a lot of the hearts and the flowers and the big bows, like really pushing it to look very quite maximalist. I think that made her look really interesting.
it was quite fun to reach out towards more sort of contemporary kind of like fashion points and trying to find like a nice kind of stylization that still felt true to the spirit of the character, but was just us able to kind of like actually sort of find a interesting spin, or a more sort of unique kind of take or something that felt specific to our game.
Yeah. I think with Alice as well, we kind of aged her up a little bit. I know she's quite young in her original story, and for a brief moment we did humor that idea. Should we have like a younger character? But I think a lot of the themes in the story is kind of like in the game, sorry, is that we are going through a battle, is going through a trial, and it kind of just makes it feels a little bit better that if she is a little bit aged up, and even then she still has this quality of innocence to her, where to me like she's very girl next door looking. Like she's not as young, but you can see that she's quite friendly as well.
It's a really good point, actually. I mean, we did have quite a lot of discussion around like how best to sort of like, pitch her age, because that there were quite a few different approaches we think we could have taken with that. Like, I mean, obviously, as you say, there's the original Alice who is supposed to be very obviously a little girl, um, and then there was sort of this notion of maybe like, oh, what if we have a more adult Alice who's sort of like who we're kind of almost like revisiting after after her adventures, and part of the interest would come in like, oh, how has she changed? Like, how has Wonderland changed this person, and how can we show this character design? And I think towards the end, I think it just sort of felt like, particularly when compared to Monkey King, you sort of need the character that sort of obviously had a youthful countenance that felt young and sort of kind of like innocent and sort of bold in the way that Alice always does, but obviously is sort of still kind of like adult enough to be sort of like confronting the Monkey King, and like and for that just to sort of feel like a fair fight. Yeah.
We also have an alternate skin for Alice, and this one is done by another artist called Sergi, based in Spain. And I think his take on Alice is a lot more like bold. Yeah, I think with Sergi, he really liked the idea of being as different as possible from the template, right? So he kind of reimagined Alice almost like a cyberpunk survivalist lost in Wonderland.
That is a really exciting possibility of using kind of like quite iconic characters, is the fact that I think when it comes to exploring like skins and alternative versions and stuff, like it you get to pick and choose which features you kind of really like, you polish and focus on that really represent the character. And I think the skins that Sergi did sort of like really just like really embodied a lot of like their kind of like style and interest and everything. So I get like this really sort of slightly grittier kind of version of Alice. It kind of just in itself told a story.
Yeah, I love the juxtaposition between the Sergi's Alice and Agnes Alice, which is, Agnes Alice is quite, clean, and it's very like high. I won't call it very, very fashionable, right? It's all about like the frills and the hearts and the roses, which again, I think that was the original Alice I had in my head, where I wanted to show in our game Turnbound. But like with Sergi's Alice, it's so there's just a lot of story in like the tiny details that he's put in, which I love as well. Like both Alices have tiny items that kind of again reference the items that they would use in game, but also like relevant to their lore. The most famous always, having like the drink me bottle in both images. And I like how like Sergi's Alice's looks like she's been literally like in on the ground, like she's got like flowers stuck to her. She looks like a lot more like dirtied up, like she's been scrounging around for a while.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, she's like, okay, we're getting her hands dirty, definitely. That has been a really, really exciting part of the characters, and this project is obviously just working with different artists on these characters. There's definitely been times where we've been able to sort of perhaps give them a steering point, like just like of what might just work better with how the game currently is and is looking and is working. But there's other times where they included features and like little flourishes that were like, oh, that's awesome. We would not have thought about that. And that will then like kind of stuff that we will then take into sort of some item designs and sort of like, and that will form us and the rest of the project. So yeah, it's been a really exciting part, I think, of working on the characters.